I pulled into the resort parking lot with the same kind of anxious energy I used to feel before school plays, unsure if I was meant to be there but too proud to turn around. The place was beautiful. Polished wooden floors gleamed beneath the glow of soft chandeliers, white chairs lined up in perfect symmetry under a canopy of spring blossoms. Everything smelled like roses and wealth. And yet there I was, holding a wedding gift that felt heavier than it should, the weight of years of sacrifice wrapped up in a neatly tied bow. I walked toward the check-in table, offering a cautious smile to the woman holding the guest list clipboard. She skimmed through the pages, then again, her smile thinned. "I'm sorry," she said, eyes darting toward her colleague. "What was the name again?" I repeated it, slower, louder. My heart didn't beat faster, it just went cold. She leaned in and whispered to the man next to her. They exchanged a look I recognized too well. Pity with a dash of embarrassment, not theirs, mine. "Let me check something," she said, stepping away. I stood there, clutching the gift tighter, the ribbon digging into my fingers. Memories came rushing in, paying off Dad's car loan when no one else would, wiring money for my sister's textbooks when she swore she'd pay me back next semester. Now I wasn't even worth a line on a guest list. Blood is thicker than water, until money's on the table. She returned with an apologetic smile, gesturing toward another staff member. "We'll find a seat for you." They didn't say I belonged, just that they'd find somewhere to put me. I nodded, forcing my mouth into something that resembled gratitude. "That's okay. Maybe it's under a different name." The man who led me inside didn't meet my eyes. He walked me past rows of beautifully set tables, floral centerpieces, wine glasses gleaming in candlelight, guests already seated and laughing. Then we veered left, behind a partition, near a side hallway that smelled like bleach. "Here we are," he said, pulling out a chair next to the restroom. I sat down without a word. I wasn't about to give anyone the satisfaction of watching me squirm. The sound of flushing echoed behind me. On the table, there was a single candle that kept flickering out. No centerpiece, no name card, just a seat. A seat they didn't think I'd occupy. I heard one of the servers whisper behind the door. "She's the one who paid for—" "Shh," someone else said. So they knew. They all knew. I straightened my posture, picked up the napkin, and laid it across my lap like I was in the main hall. Let them whisper. Let them wonder. They don't get to see me break. Dignity is not negotiable. I scanned the room through the crack in the partition. Everyone was laughing, toasting, hugging. My sister, beautiful in white, posed with her husband. The same man who once told me I was too plain to ever be loved properly. He'd said it as a joke. They always say it's a joke. I turned back to my table. The chair beside mine was empty. On purpose, maybe. I wondered if someone was supposed to sit here but refused. Then I noticed the gift on my lap. I'd wrapped it myself. Inside was something that cost me more than money. Something that should have been acknowledged, claimed. Instead, it was being passed off, gifted again by someone else's hand, with my name scrubbed from the story. I clenched the napkin, fabric twisting between my fingers. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly, my chest rising like I was about to dive underwater. The band started playing, a soft melody for the first dance. People clapped, phones recorded. The spotlight moved toward the center of the hall. I stayed where I was. This wasn't just about being forgotten, it was about being erased, and I had walked straight into it. As the band started playing the first dance song, I sat in my corner, the smell of disinfectant wafting from the restroom, clutching the gift I'd bought, wondering if I had just made the biggest mistake of my life showing up. Someone called out across the room. For a second, I thought it was my name. It wasn't. "No, not her," came the quick correction, from the best man, laughing, shaking his head like the idea was absurd. My body didn't move. I stayed in that dim corner near the restroom, my fingers still clutching the ribbon of the gift that had started to feel like a joke I wasn't in on. It wasn't the call I wanted. It was a dismissal I'd gotten used to, the kind that's done with a smile so no one else sees the bruise. Outside, the twilight deepened. String lights flickered on across the lawn. The crowd moved. Music faded. Someone tapped the mic. The sound system came alive with that high-pitched screech that always happens before a speech. Laughter followed. The air grew colder, and I could feel it in my bones. Maybe this is it, I thought. Maybe he'll say something. A nod. A thank you. Anything. I sat up straighter. The groom raised his glass. I want to thank everyone who helped us get here today. I leaned in. My parents, for teaching me how to love, my sister Brandy, for being my rock through everything, and to all of you who supported us, who lifted us when we were down. This night is for you. That was it. No mention of me. Not a syllable. I blinked, waiting for more. Maybe he'd turn around, make eye contact. Maybe there was a second part. The applause swallowed any silence I might have fit into. I didn't clap. I didn't move. All I could see was the memory. Him, years ago, sitting in my car at midnight, hands trembling, eyes bloodshot. "Please," he'd said, "don't tell anyone. Just help me fix this." A DUI, a wrecked car, a court date he couldn't face alone. I paid the lawyer's retainer in cash, never told a soul, told him, "Clean it up. This is your second chance." He said he owed me his life, and now nothing. You don't exist until you're needed, and then only as a transaction. The room spun gently with laughter, glasses clinking, silverware scraping against plates. I didn't move when the slideshow started. Photos of childhood, school, holidays, their business, the storefront with its grand opening banner. Applause again. "That's Brandy's doing," someone whispered behind me. Uncle Roy, I think. "She really built that from the ground up." Brandy. I felt my jaw tighten. That business was my blueprint, my nights, my numbers. I'd drafted the pitch deck while working 2 jobs, and she'd slapped her name on it like a sticker. No one asked, no one checked. I smiled. I cut into the dry slice of cake and took a bite so mechanical I didn't even taste it. My teeth clenched to keep it from crumbling out of my mouth. Sometimes the loudest erasure is the one done politely. The music picked up again, a soft jazz tune this time. I reached for the glass in front of me. Water, still untouched, all around me. Champagne, toasts, cheers. And I sat with silence in my chest, letting it echo until I almost believed I belonged in it. Then came the thought, not loud, but firm. My grandmother's voice from years ago floated back like a stone breaking the surface. "You were born to bend, not to break." I wasn't broken, not yet, but something had shifted. Not a plan, not revenge, not yet, just a realization. If I was being erased from their story, it was time I wrote one they couldn't hide from. My breathing shortened. The air felt thinner. I wasn't cold anymore. I wasn't angry, exactly. But I wasn't the same. And that was the moment I decided. If I'm going to disappear from their story, I'll write one where they can't escape mine. I stepped away from the reception hall, letting the doors close behind me with a muted thud. The hum of celebration dulled into a distant throb, like laughter echoing in a dream. I needed air. Space. Silence. The hallway was dim, lined with framed wedding photos from strangers who'd paid for the venue before us. A faint scent of lemon cleaner hung in the air, mixing with something older. Faded flowers, maybe, or memories that didn't age well. My shoes clicked against the tile. That sound made me feel real again. If you're invisible, I thought, you hear what people really say. The hallway bent to the left, past the coat room, then a quiet back room, the kind used by staff to stash extra folding chairs or checklists. I wasn't looking for anything, just avoiding everything. That's when I heard them. 2 voices. Low. Male. I didn't mean to listen, didn't even know I was about to, but one sentence froze me. "It's done. Brandy signed everything. House is in her name now." The voice I knew. My brother-in-law. A second man replied, sounding careful. "We still have to clean up the records. Her brother's name is on the original deed. Quiet claim won't cover that if he pushes back." Brother, that was me. My chest tightened. I didn't move, didn't breathe. My hand found the cold metal of the doorframe. Steady. Don't gasp. That house. They were talking about my parents' home. The place I helped refinance when Dad lost his pension. I'd taken out a personal line of credit and wired it without a second thought. The family lawyer had drawn up something temporary. Said we'd update the title once things settled down. That was 5 years ago. And now, my name was gone. The door muffled their voices as I backed away slowly. My mind tried to catch up. Each step I took felt heavier than the last. Trust is a loan you never know you're making. My dad said that once, on the porch when I was 18 and dumb enough to believe people said what they meant. I'd forgotten that lesson. This wasn't just about tonight. This wasn't one bad seating chart or a forgotten name in a speech. This was a pattern, layered, deliberate, years in the making. I turned the corner back into the hallway, the cool air slicing through the heat rising in my chest. That's when Uncle Hank came around the other side, carrying a half-finished drink, humming some old Conway Twitty tune. He looked surprised to see me. "Hey there," he said, pausing. "You hear about that big sale? That Brandy's husband pulled a deal with that millionaire out in Brandon? Crazy what your family can do when they put their minds together." I blinked. He had no idea what he'd just said, but it confirmed everything. I gave him a half smile. "Yeah, crazy." And then I walked past him. I didn't explode. I didn't curse or make a scene, but something clicked inside. And I may be quiet, but I ain't blind. Outside, the parking lot shimmered under the string lights. A few cars idled. The music drifted faintly from the open patio. I stood by my rental car, looking at the reflection in the window. I barely recognized the man staring back. Tonight, they erased me. Tomorrow, I start writing myself back in. And what I didn't know, what I couldn't see in that reflection, was that someone else had been listening too. I stayed outside longer than I needed to. The sky had slipped from pink to deep navy, and the string lights overhead blinked like they weren't sure if they wanted to stay lit or not. There was a soft breeze picking up, just enough to make the leaves rustle and remind me I was still standing on the edge of someone else's celebration. Behind me, laughter spilled out of the ballroom. Music, forks clinking, another round of champagne toasts. But in my head it was dead quiet, not even anger yet. Just a kind of stillness that only comes when you've seen the final nail and you're not even shocked it was hammered in by family. Night reveals what day conceals. My grandfather used to say that when he sat on the porch with a cigarette after the sun went down, and here I was, standing in the dark, seeing everything I'd been too loyal to admit before. I found her near the garden path, nursing a glass of wine like she'd earned peace. Juniper. "Hey," I said. Calm. Controlled. She turned slowly. "What?" I didn't waste time. "I heard about the house. The paperwork. The name that's missing." Her face tightened. "I don't know what you think you heard. You erased me." Before she could form her excuse, Mitchell, one of our dad's old co-workers, now retired, wandered into earshot and said casually, "Heard Brandy got the house titled. Must be nice having things lined up so smooth." Her wine glass wobbled in her hand. She didn't look at me. I didn't say a word, just stared. Long enough to let her know the silence wasn't weakness. Well, it was restraint. My fingers curled around the railing beside me. Wood, weathered and cold. I focused on the grain, breathed slow. Not to calm down, but to stay sharp. This wasn't anger. This was confirmation. When we returned inside, the slideshow had started again. One of the slides stopped on a picture of the shop, the first real project I helped them build from scratch. My business plan, my contacts, my investment, and in big cursive letters below it, Vision and Leadership, Juniper Davis. A guest near me leaned over and whispered, "She must have handled that entirely on her own." Impressive. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just stared at the screen and saw her reflection caught in it. My jaw tightened. My stomach didn't drop. It rose like it was preparing for something. You can't steal a story you didn't write and all unless everyone forgets who did. Later, by the drink table, she found me again, her tone sharp. "You've always resented me. You never let me grow." I looked her straight in the eye. "I invested when no one else would. I just asked to be seen. That's not resentment. That's reality." Behind her, Aunt Lorna approached, her voice low but firm. "Be careful how hard you push. People only forgive the quiet ones." I nodded once, slowly. I'm done being quiet. My heart didn't race. My face didn't burn. I felt cold, not from the night air, but from something older waking up inside me. I stepped back, away from both of them, and walked across the floor like a man who had already buried the part of himself that cared to explain. I reached for my phone on the side table near the coat check, found a message from Orrin, 2 PDFs, scanned copies of the deed, original and modified. My name present in one, missing in the other. I stared at the screen. This wasn't the moment to strike, not yet. Leverage works best when it's timed. So I let my breath steady, tucked the phone back in my pocket, and looked around the room with new eyes. The music had changed. Guests were slower now, fuller, drunker, but I was wide awake. I walked back into the hall wearing a smile. Nobody knew it was the one I sharpened just for tonight. Morning at the lake house felt too clean to be real. The sun came up over the water like a blade of gold cutting through glass, lighting up the deck boards and the white coffee mugs lined on the rail. Inside, the family gathered for breakfast as if last night hadn't happened. The smell of bacon and syrup drifted through the room, silverware clicking against plates, low chatter about weather and travel plans. No one said a word about the slideshow or the speeches. I sat at the long wooden table with a plate in front of me, untouched. I stirred my coffee without drinking it, my hands steady but cold. It was a strange kind of theater, everyone performing normalcy. People don't bury you in the dark. They do it in daylight, with coffee and eggs. I could feel their eyes darting to me in a way, like they were waiting for me to break the script. Gavin broke it first. He leaned back in his chair, smirking just enough to be noticed. "Some people only show up when there's a camera, huh?" His tone had that edge, meant to sting but pass as a joke. I looked up slowly. "You mean the ones who funded your first startup?" The room froze. Forks suspended midair. The sound of the lake outside felt louder than the silence in the room. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I just met his eyes, steady and level. "I was part of the paperwork," I said. "I have the files." He tried to laugh, but it came out thin. "You always had a flair for drama. Or documentation," I replied. Juniper shifted in her seat. "We don't need to." But I didn't look at her. I just kept my eyes on Gavin until he glanced down at his plate. That was the first time the table realized I wasn't going to let them pretend anymore. Juniper cleared her throat. "You're embarrassing yourself. This isn't the time." I finally turned to her. "Erase me again in front of them, and I'll make sure they see the receipts." My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The words landed like ice water across the table. The room seemed to shrink. Uncle Ty, who usually stayed out of family politics, glanced at me and gave the smallest nod. Nothing else, but it was enough to register. Someone had noticed. "You teach people how to treat you," I said quietly, more to myself than to them. I finally stopped teaching silence. No one spoke after that. The clink of forks resumed, but softer now, slower. They watched me differently, not like a problem, more like a risk. I excused myself, standing without haste, and stepped out onto the deck. The air was sharp with the smell of pine and water. This time I wasn't leaving to escape. I was stepping out to mark the line. I remembered the times I'd bitten my tongue at dinners like this, laughed off slights, chosen peace over truth. Those days were gone. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened my messages. Sent a text to my lawyer. Send updated copies of all business ownership documents. Then I opened my photo gallery and deleted the old pictures of the business dinners. All the fake smiles, all the staged gratitude, gone with a swipe. When you stop asking for a seat, you build your own table. I stood there, looking out at the lake, feeling the shift settle into my bones. Inside, the family murmured. Outside, the wind moved across the water. And as I slipped the phone back into my pocket, I felt it, eyes on me. Someone was watching from the porch. They hadn't said a word. Yet, I sat on the edge of the armchair with a lukewarm cup of coffee resting in my palms. Around me, voices floated lightly through the parlor, polite, distant, rehearsed. No one looked my way for too long. Some were pretending to read the lake view through the windows, others to scroll aimlessly on their phones. The room smelled of pine cleaner and stale perfume, the kind of air people dress up in to pretend everything's all right. I wasn't pretending anymore. I watched them sip, chat, smile, and counted how many seconds I had left to stay quiet. They think I'm broken, I thought. Watch me prove them wrong. I glanced at my phone, rereading the message Oren sent me. Property records. My name. Proof. Not hearsay. Not assumptions. Facts. The locket around my neck felt heavier than usual. It held both our initials, mine and Juniper's. A relic from when we used to share secrets, not silence. I looked at it once more before tucking it beneath my shirt. Then I stood up. Steady, silent, ready. I stepped into the center of the room just as someone raised a glass for a toast. I didn't wait. "Before you raise a glass," I said, "I have something to say." The words sliced the air clean. Conversations died mid-sentence. Chairs shifted. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. "I just wanted you all to know, this place, this house you've been celebrating in, I helped pay for it." Gasps. A pause. Then confusion. Gavin's brow furrowed. Juniper blinked twice too fast. "I never asked for a plaque, never asked for a spotlight," I said. "Just honesty." From my phone, I mirrored the screen onto the TV above the fireplace. Oren's email, scanned deed attached, filled the screen. There it was, black and white. My name, the same property deed they'd presented as theirs alone. Behind me, the slideshow had quietly resumed. It flashed an image of the lake house, captioned under Juniper's name. I pointed at the document. "That name right there." That's mine, not hers." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I could feel their thoughts screaming, but mouths stayed shut. Gavin recovered first. "I was just managing it. Paperwork gets messy. You know how these things go." "Except I don't," I cut in, sharp, "because I trusted family to handle it right." Juniper took a step forward. Her voice came tight, rehearsed. "You always twist things. You're always the victim." I met her eyes. "And you're always the hero, right? Even when you rewrite the story?" Murmurs began in the back. Someone coughed. Uncle Oren stepped forward. "Maybe we need to talk through this. All of us, calmly." He looked at me, and in that moment I knew he believed me, at least enough to say it publicly. The room divided, not with shouting, not with sides, but with stares. Some looked down. Some looked at me and didn't blink. I didn't feel triumphant, just lighter, like a weight had finally shifted off my chest and into theirs. I walked out into the hallway. My heart was a slow, deliberate drum in my chest. Not fast, not erratic, just alive. I leaned against the wall and breathed deep. My mind reached back, years of nodding along, smiling through the dismissals. Not anymore. I will not ask for permission, I thought. I will take what's mine. I pulled out my phone again, scrolled through my contacts, marked the names I'd need to call, legal support, financial records, every step lined up like chess pieces. I was ready. And just as I turned to walk back into the living room, a hand slid something into mine, a sealed envelope. No words, just my name, handwritten across the front. It was late, the kind of quiet where even the soft clink of water in a glass sounded too loud. We sat around the long oak table in the small conference room of the lake house. The lights overhead were dim, shadows stretching out like accusations. I looked at every face before I spoke. Some stared back, others pretended to be somewhere else. "I appreciate you all coming back together," I said, voice steady, even though my jaw was clenched behind it. "I need to add context to what I shared earlier." Nobody moved. I could hear the wall clock ticking. Juniper sat 2 seats down, hands folded too neatly in her lap. Gavin leaned back like he had somewhere better to be. I pressed forward. "You've seen the ownership documents. You've seen the investment trail. What you haven't seen yet is why this happened." I laid out a printed email face down on the table, then flipped it. Gavin's words were right there. "We need to phase him out gently. Legacy transitions are always messy. But this is family business now. We'll honor it better by moving forward without the baggage." Nobody spoke. I watched faces twitch, eyes shift. "The truth doesn't rush," I said. "It arrives." Gavin stood, tried to laugh it off. "This was about consolidation, not betrayal. Don't twist it." "Did you invite me in to build it? Or to disappear quietly once you had enough of what I gave?" I asked. His smile faltered. "I didn't ask for applause," I added, "but I damn sure didn't expect erasure." The room held its breath, and then Oren stepped in. He held 2 sealed envelopes. One he handed to me, the other he laid in the center of the table. "I've kept these," he said, "for the day someone was brave enough to ask the questions no one wanted answered." He turned to the room, voice calm but weighty. "The original deed, complete with the joint signatures, along with emails from when Gavin tried to undo the deal without disclosure." He looked at me. You weren't supposed to be cut out. You were supposed to be the anchor. That was always the intention. Then he handed me a flash drive. Everything else is on here. No one looked directly at me now. Gavin's face had gone gray. Juniper kept her eyes on the table. From the corner of the room, my aunt quietly nodded once. It shifted then, not in volume, but in weight. Vanessa stood, trying to salvage control. We all had pressure, okay? Decisions had to be made. No one forced you to disappear my name, I said. She froze. I was right there, I continued. Building, supporting, and all you had to do was say my name out loud. You couldn't even do that. No one defended her. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat. I just stood taller. Outside the conference room, I stepped into the hallway and let the silence settle in my bones. My heart was hammering, but my hands didn't shake. I remembered the years I stayed quiet, biting down the urge to speak just to keep the peace. Not anymore. I'd crossed something inside. It wasn't anger anymore, it was structure, like steel rebar setting into concrete. There'd be a courtroom next, paperwork, records, public filings. I'd keep moving. I wasn't seeking revenge, I was reclaiming presence. I walked back toward the library where they'd gathered again. And just before stepping in, I saw Gavin across the room. He took off his wedding ring, not with sadness, not with regret, but with intent. The hall buzzed with low conversation and clinking glasses, 100 little moments blending into one restless crowd. No one suspected what was coming. The chandeliers above shimmered, polished too well, as if the light itself was holding its breath. I stepped through the main entrance with calm steps, but every nerve in me was coiled tight. Eyes started to drift toward me, some out of curiosity, others with something closer to dread. They saw my face, then the phone in my hand. I walked slowly, each footstep echoing across the hardwood, past the tables where laughter had faded into whispers. I reached the table on stage, laid the phone down gently. The string lights flickered. The projector clicked to life. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. Tonight they see me, or they'll wish they never silenced me. With the screen lit behind me, I tapped play. No music, no edits, just Gavin's voice, raw and damning, filling every corner of the room. I had to clean it up, he said in the video. He doesn't have the stomach for this stuff. I rerouted the shares, made it clean. No one noticed because they think he's weak. A low gasp broke the silence. A fork clinked against a plate. Gavin's face went bloodless as the rest of the confession poured out. Finance documents. Names erased. His words admitting it all. He started to rise from his seat. This is out of context. I raised a hand, palm out, didn't say a word. The video kept going. His voice, smooth, confident back then, now echoed like a hammer. I stood there and let it land. Every syllable, every crooked truth now out in the open. Juniper's breath caught. She pressed a hand to her chest like something inside her snapped. Gavin's eyes scanned the room, searching for someone, anyone, to meet his gaze. None did. Guests glanced at their phones. A few recorded, others just watched, frozen. Then Uncle Orrin stepped forward from the side, slow and deliberate, holding 2 envelopes and something small clenched in his hand. He told me this in confidence, Orrin said. But it was never right. I kept the tape. I didn't move. I didn't have to. Orrin placed the flash drive on the table in front of me. Thought I'd never use it. Guess I was waiting for someone brave enough to ask. The hall didn't erupt. It cracked. In silence, like glass under pressure, Vanessa looked like she might faint. Juniper didn't cry, but her jaw clenched so tight it shook her earrings. I stepped forward toward the stage. Gavin's cufflinks caught the light, a tiny key emblem on each one. Subtle, but telling. I reached toward his wrist. He didn't stop me. I took the key-shaped pin from his lapel, walked up the steps, faced the room. Then I turned to Juniper and placed it gently in her hand. You deserve to know I never needed that to belong. She didn't speak. Didn't have to. And her eyes said enough. I faced the crowd. I never asked for applause, I said. I asked for truth. I laid down the folder, documents, deeds, contracts, lined in order, emails, screenshots, signatures. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. This ends now. For my name, my contribution, my dignity. The lights above dimmed slightly. The spotlight behind me sharpened. Around me, faces blurred. But mine was clear. I turned to leave. Each step felt like reclaiming a little more of myself. The crowd remained still. But just before I reached the hallway, I heard steps behind me. It was Gavin's uncle. He leaned close. 2 words. We're done. 3 weeks. That's how long it's been since the lights dimmed on that stage and the truth cracked through the polished facade of our family. I didn't run. I didn't hide. I just moved. A new apartment, nothing extravagant. 1 bedroom, creaky floors, view of the marina that catches the morning sun like a slow apology. No more marble countertops. No more silver-framed lies staring back at me from mantles. Just space to breathe. Each morning, I walk. No music, no noise. Just me and the sound of seagulls and boat masts clinking in rhythm. I journal, not for anyone else, just to see my thoughts out loud. And they're clearer now. Not softer, but clearer. There's no switch that flips when pain stops. It just stretches out until you realize one day it's not leading anymore. I wrote this line yesterday. They tried to define me with 1 word. I rewrote it into a sentence. And I meant it. The world, oddly, had something to say too. The wedding clip, viral. Of course it did. A polished man torn down by his own voice. It's made for internet theater. Strangers wrote to me. Emails from Kansas, voice memos from New York, even a handmade card from a church group in Alabama. People I hadn't heard from in decades reached out. Not with pity, no, with recognition, respect. And then there was the letter. No return address. Just a neat, almost formal script I hadn't seen since childhood birthday cards. It was her, Varnessa. No signature. But I'd know her choice of paper anywhere. She said she was sorry for what was allowed to grow in silence. I folded it once and slid it into the drawer. Some closures don't need responses. They just need silence to settle in. Gavin didn't get silence. He got press, investigation, suspension, headlines. Uncle Orrin took over the company, interim but firm. Cut Gavin out of board votes, froze his accounts, called in auditors. Legal proceedings started quickly. I gave my testimony, short and factual. Nothing more. Gavin messaged me. Wanted a final conversation. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, because I was finished. Forgiveness isn't a spotlight moment. Sometimes it's the quiet walk in the opposite direction and never looking back. A few days ago, I sat at my usual cafe, same spot, same cup of coffee that always goes cold. A woman walked in, sharp suit, grace like gravity. She sat down uninvited, but not unwelcome. She introduced herself, said she was the silent investor behind Gavin's startup, said she watched the footage. You remind me of who I used to be, she said. Then she reached into her bag and placed a key on the table. Old brass, familiar. The estate, she said. The one your family stripped from you. I bought it. It's yours now. You earned it twice over. My fingers didn't move for a long while. When they did, I wasn't shaking. I took the key, nodded once, and blinked back tears, not from pain, from peace. The kind that sneaks up on you after years of chaos, full circle. I went back to that house, not to reclaim anything, but to begin something. I started small, hosting support circles in the living room. Women like me, overlooked, undervalued, starting again. We drink coffee, share stories, pass tissues, and laugh. Honest, guttural laughter that comes from knowing you survived. I started recording my voice, nothing fancy, just a mic and an old desk, talking to people who might need the truth the way I once did. Episode 1 ends with this line. They called me a rat. I built an empire from the shadows. Last night, as I arranged chairs for a weekend session, the doorbell rang. I didn't expect anyone. I opened it, and the person on the other side, let's just say this story isn't quite over yet.